Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second session on day three of the Future of Biopharmaceutical Analysis Summit 2026. And this one promises to be a really interesting one because we're looking at boosting manufacturing efficiency and reliability with AI, sponsored by Turnitin. We've got a really interesting panel. They've all got very diverse opinions and very diverse viewpoints and bring a lot of knowledge to the session. And first panelist I want to introduce is Dr. Sulaf Assi, who is Senior Lecturer in Analytical Forensic Chemistry at the School of Pharmacy and Biomolecular Science, Liverpool John Moores University. Next, we have Vasiliki Kalimodimou. Sorry, Vasiliki, I always trip over your surname. Who is Director of Flow Cytometry Research and Regenerative Medicine Department at IASO Maternity Pediatric and Research Hospital Athens and Assistant Professor, European University Cyprus in Frankfurt. And finally, we have Jason Gibson, who's Solutions Engineer in Turnitin, who has a vast amount of experience in terms of actually deploying AI systems across the board. So I just want to start with a quick icebreaker, which I'll kind of see where the perspectives lie from each of the different panelists on this. AI has become probably the most overloaded word in pharmaceutical discussions right now. It's simultaneously a genuine capability revolution. I think most people would agree on that. And also a bit of a canvas for some creative marketing in a sense. And it's also one of those things that is essentially everybody is interested in, but I'm not convinced that within the industry, everybody knows enough about it. It's partly why this panel exists. Before we get into the substance, I'd like to ask each of you in turn, in a sentence or two, from where you sit, is AI in pharma already changing things in practice? Or are we still mostly talking about what it might do one day? And Sulaf, let's go to you first.
Okay, I would say that AI is moving fast in pharma, but its visible impact is not seen due to regulatory challenges as well, because pharma has increase of biologic uncertainty, and as well strict regulations that support safety, efficacy, or quality by design.
Vasiliki, how do you see it?
Yeah, for me, for the biotherapies part of you, which is my field, I can say I'm going to use the sentence that I always say with AI. AI is here to stay and actually can improve a lot because especially when it comes to pharmaceutical industry, we can analyze large volumes of production of data to optimize process, reduce waste, and increase productivity. And we can do that very, very efficient. And that is very, very helpful because keep in mind, the errors, the time, the cost that we have faced before.
Jason, from your perspective, how do you see it?
I think for us, what we see in terms of more so from the research side of things is that, yes, there is AI in the research, but it varies in terms of, its application. Sometimes, obviously, it has a really useful application in terms of synthesizing data and being able to summarize information that is incredibly complex in a way that makes it a lot more digestible for your kind of everyday reader. But then obviously there's the other side of it where I don't really think that the processes and the workflows have been completely figured out quite yet in terms of the physical application of it, especially from what Dr. Sulaf and Dr. Vasiliki have said previously about what we're seeing in terms of is there enough training data and things like that around the actual niche areas of pharmaceuticals.
And I think we'll probably touch on that point quite a few times as we go along, because it's one that's actually emerged in several other sessions as well. But I'll leave that thought for now. I'd be really interested as well in terms of understanding what the audience thinks about this area. So we have a poll question, which is, how much visibility do you currently have into AI use within your teams? So that will be open for the whole session. So if you'd like to answer that at any point, please do. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the answers to that as we go along. Let's talk a bit about the foundations. So kind of what you need before AI can actually help you. And I think first, if I can turn to you, Vasiliki, on this one. So the session title and the session description involves kind of efficiency, reliability, all of the things I think we conventionally think about in terms of what AI can do. But when we were discussing before this event started, you flagged something that I think is really important. In the kind of highly regulated environments that we operate in, quality assurance, regulatory compliance, accreditation, all of these things kind of have to come before efficiency. So can you kind of frame that for us? What does it look like? What does it tell us about where most pharma AI initiatives are getting stuck at the moment?
Definitely what you said. Regulations and quality is the biggest problem that we're facing right now when we try to use it. Everybody needs, AI is here to stay. AI, everybody wants to use AI. Everybody wants to involve, but we really need, to take a moment and think what it will have the impact to the patients. So first of all, we really need to have the quality assurance and quality controls. So you really need to have the automated inspection using, computer vision, real-time anomaly detection during the production, all the things that we actually do right now. It's not that we asking for something else, but now as people, as a quality assurance in a clinic, in a cord blood bank, we have to do all these things. We have also need to have early detection of deviation from the standard operation conditions, and also the enhanced root cause analysis. Root cause analysis, when it comes to my field, which is biotherapies, is very, very important because I'm using a product to actually infuse to a patient. Also, all the regulatory bodies at EU, FDA, AABB, FACTNet, CORD, all these organizations that give you accreditation, they really need to actually come together and fix some standards, fix some regulation for all of us to use. Because yes, AI is very, very some people, they think it's easy because it gives me an answer in minutes, but it's not only that when you want to use it in patients. So we really need to figure out how to implement all this before we start going. And I know that we will talk later on about that, but keep in mind all the problems that we're facing right now when it comes to patients. And so we really need to have regulation. We really need to have quality before we start using it.
Do you think then that this is something that I guess is it something that the pharma industry is waiting for regulators to tackle? Regulators are waiting for a steer from the pharma industry. How's that kind of dynamic evolving?
Yeah, this is the dynamic, especially the people in research that we face every single time. This is a battle between them. But I think it needs to start from the scientists. It needs to start from us that we really need this. To give you a very solid example, when every cord blood bank started collecting stem cells to use it in regenerative medicine, we said, yes, you can do it, but how you can prove that is actually reliable and we can use it to a patient safely? So what we ask as scientists, okay, we need accreditation. We need some regulatory bodies to give us some instructions of how we will do it correctly. And they're going to come and see. We will do it. How is the implementation progress? I think it needs to start from us, because if you expect from FDA, from EU, from EMA, of whatever other organization to spend money, they will do it at the end. So I think as a scientist in any sector that we work, we really need to start talking about that, and we really need to start publishing about that as well.
It was an interesting conversation in one of the sessions yesterday where we were talking about the need for, not just the industry, but regulators and all of the interested bodies to actually get together and work together rather than kind of working in isolation as we do. And I think what you've explained there is a really good example of that challenge.
Yeah.
Salah, just to turn to some, there is an old cliche, and when I say old, it's one of the first things I ever learned in computing, which was a very long time ago, which is garbage in, garbage out. And it's a bit of a cliche in data science, but in pharmaceutical analytical context in particular, it has some specific and quite serious implications. So in your work applying machine learning to spectroscopic and analytical chemistry data, what does good data quality actually look like? What does it mean in practice? And have you seen examples where poor data quality actually has shown up in a model's outputs?
Yeah, so data, this is a very common saying, and it's commonly used not just in analytical chemistry, all fields. So the biased data or inequitable data or in unrealistic data, it will not give good findings. So there are challenges that come to the data in relation to look at good quality data. Several factors need to be considered. The first one is the variability across the data, the sample size of the data, is it suitable, and how representative it is. As well, it's not good to talk of the data independent of the model as well. So depending on the complexity of the computational model and the type of AI model used, the data can be tailored as such. For example, data suitable, let's say for regression, for predicting outcomes, is different data suitable for classification, which is a supervised classification or unsupervised classification. The other thing to look at when evaluating data, I like the two guidelines. First is the FDA guidelines for using AI in drug discovery, which looks at challenges in data. And second, the EU FAIR data criteria, which is your data should be findable, achievable, interoperable. So these two are really in parallel. So one highlights a lot the problems in a nice way, and the other provides the solutions to the data. But in summary, it's important to consider the sets, consider the model, consider first the context, what am I answering? Second, from there, the sample size, followed by the categories to put into the outcome. Then, of course, what Dr. Kalodimuk told us earlier about validation and about credibility of the data. So we shouldn't forget the quality tools before feeding them into the model.
Just to follow up on that with something for Vasiliki, actually. So you've highlighted before the challenge of small patient data sets in clinical and regenerative medicine settings as a particular constraint when we start to talk about AI. How does that shape what AI can and can't realistically do?
I totally agree with everything Dr. Asi said about what we need. The only issue that I'm facing in my field is that right now, AI cannot help me with small patients' data, this is what's happening when it comes to regenerative medicine, because I will have one patient with a specific condition that actually I cannot use AI for that. So we really need to keep that in mind, because right now we do not have the algorithms for the small data. Jason probably will tell us more about that. But for me, right now is insufficient. And if we want to actually use it accurately, we can. We really need to keep that in mind in order to develop, again, validate and optimize personalized treatment models. So right now, especially in my field, and I'm talking about biotherapies, regenerative medicine, we face a huge issue. I'm working with a professor in Athens, in the Medical School of Athens, to actually create algorithms, to use it in small data and validate them. I can tell you that I'm doing that for the last 2 years. I didn't have any breakthrough. Just, I have to say that, but I'm convinced AI can help. But we really need to find the models in order and validate the models in order to use them, especially when it comes to patients. And that needs to be a key message to the people of the audience. If they want to use it, they really need to actually validate the data and see how they can use it effectively and accurately.
And I think that touches on challenges around governance, because you have obviously got data governance, you've got governance of how you implement AI. Governance is always a kind of key question within our industry. So Jason, implementing AI at scale doesn't just require good data, it generates its own governance challenges. And from what you've seen across organizations of various kinds navigating AI adoption, where are the basic or the biggest gaps? Is it a technical problem? Is it process problems? Is it cultural organizational problems? And does the pharma context make it a little bit harder or easier to address?
I think when it comes to implementing any AI tool, regardless of whether it's to surface that AI is being used or it's to actually use a large language model for efficiency or for large scale problem solving, it's normally all three of those things. So it's normally that you are going from I've not used it before to I'm using it and I don't actually understand what I'm using it for, but I've been told that we should. So there's this kind of feeling that you don't want to miss the train. So everybody's jumping on it and it's like, okay, cool, I'm using AI, but I don't actually know, is it appropriate for what I'm using it for? And they're trying to use it for, maybe a scenario that it's not applicable to. So there's that first element of trying to understand where is it beneficial for me to use AI and where does the risk reward element start to go far too far over to the risk side. Then there's the actual, the personal and cultural feeling towards AI. You've got that camp of people where it's like, yes, I think using AI is a great thing. Then you've got the camp of people where it's like, I don't think we should be using AI. And then you've got the camp of people who are going, I don't know, I'm sitting between two of those. And I don't really know where I really sit right now because I don't know if it's too risky, but I also don't want to be left behind. And there's that feeling. So it does have some, in most organizations, there are those big gaps. And in the pharma industry, there are two ways that it can go, really. There is it creates such powerful automation and kind of breakthroughs that you lean heavier into it. But there has to be elements within that protect at each stage. So it's kind of, surfacing the risks very early on. So when it comes to, right, we're going to transition something, we're going to do a project and we're going to update all of our documentation, for example. So we're going to have to update all of that. Somebody just puts it into AI and to update it, and then they're going to follow. And we've seen this in many industries where, BP almost spent millions of pounds making a change based on a hallucination. So it's that, sense checking the data and also being able to see like how much of that content is AI generated, how much of it is actually referencing real human sources, and actually being able to like scale the governance itself. So being able to have people who are there to, like I say, sense check a lot of that data, because an analogy that someone used a while ago in terms of like computer development was, right now we can get 10 developers to do the job of 100 developers, but I'm going to need 1,000 developers to fix what those 100 did because of issues that they've come across with AI. So it's that thing of making sure that you don't end up in that situation where you create more problems than you solve and you don't have unnecessary risk, because obviously in pharma, the risk reward is a very fine line because there are human lives at stake.
And I think, and I don't know if you agree or not, feel free to disagree. I think with large language models and with textual AI in particular, so leaving aside machine learning in other areas, we're kind of used in the industry to that part of machine learning being the domain of experts. It's data scientists, people who really, are totally plugged into data analytics and all that kind of stuff. But as humans, I think with textual stuff, everyone kind of gets seduced into it a little bit. And so some people get really excited, some people feel really threatened by it, but it's a lot easier for people to understand and sometimes draw the wrong conclusions about what it can and can't do and what it's good for. Am I barking totally up the wrong tree, or do you think that's a valid thing?
I think it's very valid because, when you generate content that is readable and, makes it and has a compelling argument and has a good structure to it and all of those other things, and it looks like what you come to expect, AI is very good at that. What the core of it is, though, is one, if it's supposed to be human, if the research and everything else is supposed to be human, then if it is AI generated, that is problematic. And that is where, having AI detection and having reviews based on those scores, things like that is super important. But at the same time, if there is an element where it's like, well, AI is being allowed to be used, it's trying to understand like, where was AI actually used and was it an appropriate use of AI? Because if it's just there to summarize information and all the research has been done by a human, or you have a huge range of data and you want to conduct a meta-analysis, for example, then really, really good use of that. But again, got to check it, got to make sure that, yes, while I can see it's AI generated, I still need to make sure that I understand that, is this information actually real? So, for us as an organization, it's like, yes, we provide tools to people to do similarity checking, or some people call it plagiarism checking. And we do AI detection. That's great. There still has to be a human that checks the quality of the information. So we can have all of this scaling and everything else, but we still have to validate that what we're seeing is reliable. And that's where, we go back to Dr. Kaladamu's point and Dr. Darcy's point as well about the quality of data, making sure that you use it in an appropriate way. Because if you're trying to use it in a niche scenario, the results aren't really going to yield it's not going to be a positive result.
So I want to move on now to talk a little bit about the applications, what AI can actually do, and coming back to that point, how do we know it's working? So first to you, Sulabh, setting aside the hype in the analytical and quality control work that you do, what are the AI or machine learning tools that are genuinely deployed and delivering results? So not proof of concepts, but things which are kind of operational that you're getting real measurable outcomes from.
So what I find it with using AI, particularly when we come to machine learning, which is a subset of AI rather than large language models. So it is efficient. So it's a way, it makes experiments move faster. And this is throughout several aspects. The first is predictive maintenance. So monitoring equipment, for example, monitoring performance test of analytical equipment in lab, monitoring as well lab conditions, pressure, temperature, and likewise necessary for experiment. The second thing, it's really useful for real-time process control. So one of the many common techniques I really use is spectroscopy, which you've seen a lot about in the past. So for near infrared and Raman spectroscopy, especially if it's monitoring reaction, it's really fast if the model is well in pre-trained models, so supervised machine learning models. Another thing is in batch failure. So if there is one-off batch when analyzing multiple pharmaceutical products, AI is really good within this context because it's easy to train it. As well, if there is any investigations in cases of counterfeits as well, if libraries of analytical data are available, AI is really good in spotting as well counterfeit products based on multiple analytical techniques.
Just following on from that, this one's for Vasiliki. You've obviously got a different vantage point in cellular analysis, clinical research. Where are you seeing AI move from kind of experiment to reliable operation?
Yeah, for me, in my field, is the advantage, if I can say that we can get is like faster responses to deviations, which is it's really fast, improves the process consistency, and that is very, very helpful. Again, as Dr. Asi said, reduces variability between the batches. When you have different batches, say for cord blood bag, I have 50 patients, so that it could have an advantage, again, with regulation and everything in our mind, and enhance compliance with regulatory requirements. This can be very, very easy because to give you an example, the standards, when it comes to cellular standards, it changes every 2 years. And a QA needs to actually comply with these standards and find the changes. AI actually can help us a lot and can help us in these, things that we have actually used and we find it in my lab that is very, very reliable. Still, we have, again, the disadvantage, if I can say, because it's nice to talk about the advantages, but for me, the disadvantage here is the higher productivity. We really need to have reliable models. The proof, the product quality, again, for me, small data, this is the things, can be able to reduce the operational cost. But this is, something that we really need to look but to give a positive message, because we are here, to just clarify for the audience what's happening in pharma. In pharma, in general, AI can actually change and can actually help with the analytics, the productive maintenance, the quality monitoring. all these things, the manufacturers that can roam from the reactive operations to the proactive data-driven decision making. This be very, 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 very helpful. But again, we really need to keep in mind other aspects when it comes to pharma, like my area, that we still facing some issues. But yes, it has the pros and cons. And right now, the pros are bigger when it comes to pharma, which is good. But again, regulations and standards.
Jason, I think one of the fundamental tensions in AI adoption that I see, not just in pharma, but across the board, is that the value proposition for a lot of companies is speed. But obviously in pharma, whether it's drug discovery or manufacturing, accuracy and reliability are kind of non-negotiables. Are organizations actually leaning too heavily on human-only checks for content that's now being produced at machine speed? And if so, how do we get that balance? How do we get it right?
Yeah, so that's something we actually hear quite often is like, we have a team of people who checks all of these things. We go through and we can tell what is AI is kind of the core thing that we get a lot of, or even we can tell if it's not written by that person. What we've actually seen in the research is that in 90% of cases, humans can't detect AI. We just think we can, because if we see, the good old, I feel sorry for Julia Donaldson, actually, who uses the M- quite a lot. And I'm pretty sure those weren't written with AI. So it's those telltale signs aren't actually telltale signs really anymore, because of the rate at which things change. So having a manual process in terms of somebody looks at it and they go, oh, I think it is actually just confirmation bias in a lot of these cases, which I think resonates a lot in the pharmaceutical industry. So having the ability to, because realistically what people are doing with our technology is they're going, where do I focus my time? So if I can see where are these potentially problematic areas, I can focus my time there. And then I know everything else should be okay, but we're going to check it anyway, because obviously with risk reward again. So having that ability to really streamline that process to just being like, right, okay, here are the areas we need to look at, here are the things that we need to address, and then we can get back to, potentially that CRO or that, whoever it is, author, if it's in the publishing world, then that is a huge efficiency add to scale with the efficiency of content being created, because we're actually now seeing entire symposiums in research that are AI. Literally, the paper is AI generated. The thing responding to the questions is AI generated. And, there are opinions on those things, but they are happening. So, if things are not being generated at human speed, we can't have human speed to review them.
And I think that picking up on that point about confirmation bias, because I think that's a really important point. And Salah Vasiliki, have you seen examples where you've come across kind of confirmation bias in the context of AI in your areas? I'm going to pick on Vasiliki first because she's smiling.
Not really, because I have, for my field, because we have this, I cannot give you a feedback that is, you can rely on it, because we're facing the issue with the data. So I can't speak, unfortunately, a lot about that, because I do not have the data to support it, as I say. And, and for me as a lab rat, it's like, show me the data before you actually tell me anything. So yes, maybe Dr. Essig could actually assist you more with that.
Salah, have you seen any examples of kind of confirmation bias emerging at any point?
Yes and no, but what I see more than this is that I see the attitude towards AI. It's very different. AI models in general is very different, like two extremes. One extreme, what I would say, people agreeing, taking stuff, blind spots to AI, accepting anything an AI model would encounter. And the other thing is going cold turkey on AI, negating it. What I see missing when integrating with AI in analysis is no co-creation with AI, and the human role is often underestimated. Recently, so 2 days ago, sorry, I was reading an article, very interesting, that now philosophers are being used to train AI models with Anthropic and Google DeepMind, which is really good to teach AI ethics and then so to improve human AI relationship. But rather than biases, what I see a missing element, which is the role of human alongside the data and AI model, because we're always either fighting or loving data and AI models. And we totally forget about the analyst, the person collecting the data, the person as well interpreting this data, and the discussion. And I agree with what Mr. Gibson said earlier about not giving enough time. The time equation is lost because AI is too fast but can be clumsy or hallucinations. Humans are slow but can be detailed and nice. And most of the time, when humans are put under pressure, this is what happens with using AI, which I see it in my role as editor rather than analysis. I see reviewers generating something they should generate, but AI generated from A to Z rather than summarize.
Just following on from that a bit and thinking about kind of how we validate AI-assisted methods. So after you, what does kind of rigorous validation of an AI-assisted analytical method actually look like in practice? How do you do that kind of validation?
This is a difficult question. What I would say, I would go on a strategy rather than a validation. So
Yeah,
first, build the ready data, AI ready data. So is there any data cleaning required? Is there any standardization required? Is there standardization in terms of any quality control required, any format of the data? The second thing, have like some sort of cases that are popular, so I have references at. Then I would develop explainability for my model, say what the model is looking at. And then this model, the validation, so for credibility, it is upsetting. It's upsetting for some people having AI, but have scientists in parallel. So for example, if I'm looking at an analytical method, have analysts looking at the results, either in a focus group or one another approach of the social research tool, to see if the findings are credible, in addition to what I look with the model findings and quality tools used in models.
So just to follow on for both yourself and for Vasiliki, regulatory bodies have started addressing AI and ML in drug development, in the development phase, and probably also in the manufacturing phase. Is the guidance that you're getting as scientists actually arriving fast enough? Is it specific enough? Is it really useful?
I try to be polite. Sorry. No, actually, the problem with all this is that everybody, as Jason said, is jumping to use AI in order, not to be left alone. So if you go and check all the data that is published, scientific papers, that I'm so sorry, some of them, I don't know if you agree, the rest of the panel are really looking forward to your response. They do not have the science to actually back up most of the papers. We just talk about AI in general. The thing is, we try to be there, but we have to try to push the legislations to actually put regulations in order to use AI safety. And right now, I'm so sorry to say, nobody actually have specific standards, nobody actually have specific regulations of how to actually use AI safely. There are papers out there that they say, we really need to have the appropriate scientific data for AI platforms. We have to careful consideration of data security, privacy, regulation compliance, but we do not have regulations. The only thing that we have, please, if you have something for the rest of my panel, the people that you're helping us here today, just comment. But No, nothing is new, even for cellular standards and even for, organizations that they're huge, FDA, we do not have clear instructions. We do not have, you can use AI to actually submit a patient with, say, stem cells, just to use the thing for my field. We do not have that. We have the regulations for how to actually safely transfuse an autologous sample, but that's it. So for me, we really need to push rather than to actually start, make ourselves noticeable about that we're using AI. Try to push with data that we have, some of the labs, to the legislation to actually do something in that area. And I think we need it yesterday, to tell you the truth, because everybody is implementing. I can tell you, if you just Google it, with something that I don't want my students to do, but at AI in regenerative medicine, you will see, hospitals using it to justify we are the best, we're doing this. And this is, for me, it's scary. Very, very scary.
Yeah, what I like to say as well, because most of the time when people come to the validation or designing data or AI models, they look what is wrong. What I'd like to see an approach, rather than looking what is wrong, adding layers of protection in an approach. Whereas having, for example, what is the definition, the question we're going to do, define the questions, look at the experimental design, who are the domain expertise, and then the domain expertise, I like to see hybrid models. And then look at data quality check. Metadata is important. This is what I like to see. And I do agree a lot with Vasilis, what she's saying. There are general umbrella terms, but not much into the particulates, and some disciplines fall as a victim. So I don't know, I'd like to see more of a governance, especially with the governance elements when talking about legal, ethical standards reflected into this, and compliance standards alongside the main rules.
Absolutely. And I think that point about governance is something we'll look into a little bit later on as well. Jason, I just wondered if you think there is anything that that kind of LLMs can contribute to actually helping with developing regulation and guidance faster. Is that an area that you think there could be some contribution here?
As in the actual companies themselves that provide the LLMs?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the issue is with AI is that the rate of change is so rapid. Like the rate of change with AI is faster than anything we've ever seen before. So the biggest challenge now is that everyone now has to make decisions based on uncertainty, because you can't be sure that AI is correct, which is a double-edged sword. It's both a good thing for critical thinking and a bad thing for people who just believe everything they read. I think everyone believes that there should be some form of responsibility in multiple ways from LLM companies for certain things. I think the challenge is it's balancing that development of AI to be more effective and the kind of policy side of things, where it's like, okay, we've developed this technology and this is how we feel it should be used. Because, as an organization, their job is to get that tool into the hands of as many people as possible and to make it as embedded in their day-to-day life as possible, which when we've never really seen with any other technology. You either develop a tool that does, it's a media tool, it is a scientific tool, and then it doesn't bleed into any other aspects of your life. Whereas AI bleeds into almost every single aspect of your life now, which is where it becomes such a difficult thing to manage. I think the responsibility could potentially be heavily put into the education system in terms of how do we educate students to be aware of the benefits and the risks and the opportunities of AI, so that when they get to being a researcher, being a pharmacologist, or whatever their study field is, so they actually understand the application correctly. And if you've grown up with it, you can probably understand its application better, in a sense, than we can right now, because we're going from, this is like going from dial-up to gigafast internet overnight. So it's such a strange world that we're in. But I think, and I also think that there should be probably a little bit more of a guidance to people about, you know, what the difference is between certain models. Like if you have a company approved model, for example, that doesn't train itself on your data, that means that it's okay for you to put your content in there in most scenarios. But, you know, we're seeing people who are, you know, potentially in the pharmaceutical world, who are in the QA side of things, or in, you know, purely in analytics or something, and they go, you know what, I want to clean this language up a little bit, or I want to summarize this. So they just quickly copy and paste that highly confidential information, put it into ChatGPT or Gemini or any of the other tools in a public facing world, and all of a sudden you've just trained the model on that data that is in very early stages. Now, all of a sudden, that tool then tells you, if you prompt it, that what it's just learned there is true. So it's going to reply to you with this fact that is not, because, you know, it's not magic. It's looking at training data. And it goes all the way back to what we said before. It's all about the quality of the data that's in there. For us, it's like, okay, well, being able to see that, yes, it's AI generated is super important, but it's that step after it of, why is that AI generated? How did it get there? And also, why does that AI generated part link to a publication that's in preprint? You know, there's all of those different things. And like I say, there's a responsibility on everyone in that. And I definitely think there should be probably a bit more of a responsibility on the LLM companies to be educating, to be providing, you know, assistance to governments and to organizations that are going to get probably the most benefit, but also the most risk from it.
Vasiliki, you've been nodding vigorously all the way through that.
Yeah. Yes, because I was thinking he was to the point. He was to the point of everything that he said, you know, because for me, as I said about the safety and everything, you know, GDPR, all these things, how safely we can upload data of patients and make sure that nothing is gonna leak in, because, you know, my hospital was hacked 2 times per year. So, you know, all these things that we really need to consider before we start implementing. Yes, we can use AI. And of course, I'm using it. All of us here, we're using it. And I think it will be great. But we really need to solve all these things. That's why I was nodding you, because I have in my mind the safety of the patient is also GDPR, how we make sure. So the only thing in my mind that I can say is that before to push legislations and all these things, that they take their time, and we know that. I think IT departments, it's the most reasonable people to start talking to make you actually start using AI safely and start have, you know, their own QA system and their own SOPs for you to follow safely in order to minimize, you know, the risk and to benefit for the AI driven insights. I think this needs to be the starting points if you want to implement it yesterday and you are in a hospital or in a facility. I think this is the most the safest way to go.
And I think that leads nicely on to the next kind of big area that I want to look at, which is quick wins, long-term strategy, and how sometimes there might even be a, tension in between the two. So Vasiliki, back to you again. From your experience in practice, where are the kind of genuine low barrier AI wins? And what are the kind of structural investments that organizations need to make, or that they're underestimating or deferring, that will limit them later on?
Yeah. For the hospital point of view, for a research lab, they think that, you know, we can use AI. So what? You know, put your data, you're going to have it. It's going to be easy. I don't need to have, you know, 10 people working, 10 researchers working on that. And you're going to check. The thing that they really need, you know, yes. But again, for my point of view, for my research, I do not have the data in order to actually say the next day, yes, you know, Dr. Kalodimou, we're going to infuse you with this stem cell therapy and you're going to be, you know, cured. I cannot say that. So they really need to realize that before we implement AI, we really need to actually start invest how we, with the collaboration again with IT, because right now we do not have legislation. So I think this is the people that they can help us to actually spend money to create our own system, to create our own validation, to see that, to actually validate any data that we gain. Is it correct? Can we use it? Is it safety? The safety, the GDPR against all this. Because right now everybody wants to use it, and we come to conclusions, and then later on we actually say, oh my God, what we did. So yes, because that happens as well. So I think we really need to invest our time right now with our ITs and how to actually implement safely in a hospital background or a research institution, and then have our own regulation, our own SOPs, our own validation system, and then go and push a little bit. It's nice if we want to minimize. For me, AI, because I need to say that. Yes, AI is good. Yes, AI is here to help us, but I don't think AI can do what a person can do, to tell you the truth, because we create the AI. So, and this needs to have it in our mind at the end of the day in order to start using safety, and we really need to invest. I think for me, and we really need to invest to the regulation and QI and IT, make a specific IT department in a hospital that is going to be actually have the background, because AI is not the ChatGPT. AI is not that, okay, give me the answer. AI, when it comes to hospital, it means something more, because at the end of the outline is the patient. And we really need to be very, very careful on that.
Absolutely. It's interesting that philosophy comes up, because my long ago PhD was actually in the philosophy of AI. So this is great territory for me. Salah, just turning to you for a second. In the analytical and academic research context, where do you think quick wins with AI tools? Where do they where are they, first of all? But do they kind of sometimes give us a bit of a false perspective? Are we building up debt in the way that we use them? And how do you guard against that?
Yeah, they can be really good, they can be really fast, and they scale up answers and experiments, especially if we're looking into material characterization alongside the analysis or counterfeit detection. However, as any AI models, like simple statistics models like us, they're perfectionists. They tend to go to perfection, so they can lie, they can give false positives, they can overfit what they say. So this is why we need to align systems. We need align systems with method validation guidelines, with method development guidance, and we always need, as Vasilis told us, we always need a human check in this case.
That actually leads me nicely into thinking a little bit more about the future of visibility, oversight, and governance when we move to scale. Because, as you said, AI usage can grow like that really quite quickly, and they operate really fast as tools. Jason, as AI tools start to proliferate across organizations, whether that's formally, informally, sometimes without central tracking, let's be honest about it, how much visibility do you think most organizations have into the how and where of AI being used? And from a governance standpoint, is this primarily a problem of awareness, policy, something more structural? What have you seen that gives us some insight into those areas?
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things is that more on our, one of the things that we did as an organization back in 2025 is we launched a tool that was basically there to have people have undergraduate students work with AI in a writing space, but then the instructors could actually see how they used AI. The first thing that everyone said back to us was, well, we need a report to be able to see which instructors are using this, how much of the instructors are using the AI features, and all these other things. And then we would ask them, okay, so is that something that you currently have from your AI tool? So, well, no, because they all use their own. Okay, so we look at the same thing in universities, in every every industry pretty much. And it is actually really hard for organizations to see how AI is being used because it's more anecdotal most of the time. It's, I used AI for this, and hey, have you seen how I used AI to do this thing? There's very little actual understanding of how AI is being used in every sense, whether it's, children in high school all the way up to manufacturing and R&D. Obviously, there are some tools that have a little bit more insight, but it's still that kind of high level of, they've used this many prompts or whatever, or, especially when it's generative AI. So I think the big blind spot really for many people is how well are people using AI? Is there something that we can do to improve the way that people use AI? And then it's like, what do we do next? So that kind of feedback, feed forward element. So for us, it's, we are trying to work with these organizations to say, like, if you are going to use AI, you need to make sure that everyone is actually aware of how to use it correctly. Not just about, don't put your own, put sensitive data in, all of those kind of things. It's about like, how do you actually get the best out of the tools? And we, at the moment, and I think many people aren't really seeing a consistent view of how AI is being used in an organization, regardless of what it is. And I think that's probably going to be the next big thing that people will actually want from a large language model is, and I know that some of them do it, but like I say, not everyone does, is that really good, who is our superstar AI user and how do they use it? There's a lot of privacy elements around that, but I think that's probably the next big thing that people will start leaning into is that, education of AI, because we can't all go back to university or go back to school to learn how to use this new tool. Many of us, and I'm going to assume here, many of us are learning it on the go. So we're, testing, failing very often, figuring out what it can, it can't do, and finding the limitations in real time. And that's what we're seeing when it comes to the research side of the world, where we see the content get there. We have conversations with our partners about, well, we keep seeing really high levels of AI, but I just don't understand it. And it's like, well, what did they use to actually write all of this? And it's like, oh, well, they just used Google Docs, or they just used Word. And it's like, well, did they realize that Copilot was plugged in there and Gemini was plugged in there? Yes, they were protected environments where the data isn't being trained, but the content is AI generated because they're clicking every single time to make those adjustments. So there's that. And I honestly think that the other side of it is how much of the stuff that they're using AI for is actually just cognitive offloading. Is it actually a benefit? Are they using it for the right reason, or are they just using it like a personal assistant who they go, right, okay, you can do this for me and I don't want to have to think? Because, like I say, there's that huge potential of AI, but if it's garbage in, garbage out, and it trains itself on what we put out there, and the stuff that we put out there is based on what we use with AI, we end up in it, choking on its exhaust fumes. So yeah, I think that's what a lot of institutions and a lot of organizations really, really want, and I think really, really need, is that understanding of how AI is being used. And I would love to see more conversations about that, honestly, because I think it's going to help everybody.
So we're going to move shortly to questions from the audience. And just to remind the audience, you can submit questions at any time, please, on any topic you like, as long as it's AI. But I just want to have one question to kind of close with. And this one, I think we'll go through for everybody. When you look at how the pharmaceutical industry is approaching AI right now, so not the specific tools, not the regulations, but almost the underlying mindset, what's the one assumption about it that you think needs to be, we all need to challenge before we can move from kind of lots of pilot programs, kind of slightly chaotic situation where everybody's using it, to a genuine sustained transformation? And start with you, Sulaf.
I would say, I would reflect as well from what Jason was saying about the use of AI. I would say human AI co-creation, and as well, we start with the kids from the university level, training on prompt engineering and how to prompt and how to make the most of it, rather than being scared of language models or agents, if they start to use agents, or hating it. No, work with it. It's a tool, it is out there. It's just how to get the best out of it.
Vasiliki, what's your take on that one?
Yeah, for me, they really need to think to invest, to data quality, integration in governments and regulations. I think this is the key to move forward and have actually the scenarios that we can use at the end of the day, because we really need to keep in mind that many researchers are many facilities, hospitals, universities using AI. If we start actually focusing in these things that are very important, we can actually exchange data and we can help each others actually. And at the end of the day, for my point of view, patient care. So for me, this is the key areas: regulation and then data quality integration, how to actually use the data.
Jason, what's your take on that one?
I think probably the assumption that many people are making in general really is that people are overly relying on AI and they're using it for every single thing and every single manuscript and every single bit of R&D and every single research paper is being generated by AI or there's AI interaction. I think the reality is, yes, there is a fair bit of it, but I think we're not giving ourselves enough credit, and I don't think we're giving the industries enough credit in the sense that there is incredibly smart and bright people that are doing this work, and they're partnering, like what Dr. Salas said, they're partnering with the tools in most scenarios, where we're seeing the actual breakthroughs, because that's super important. I think the other thing as well is that we have to be so well aware that we're almost potentially close to the next, Paolo Macchiarini situation. And I'm sure many people watching this are very familiar with who that is. And if you're not, quick Google search will help you with that. But, where instead of it being the person did the research in a fraudulent way, it's that the AI did assist with the research and created a false result. So I think the most important thing, I think like everyone has said, is it's that education, it's that governance, it's that checking, it's having integrity checks that is almost as a standard. I'm not saying this isn't you should use our tools. This is just having technology in place to make sure that you're checking, because yes, we can do some of it, but we can't do all of it. And we can't look at the things especially when a drug is literally going through trials and things like that. That's where integrity has to be at the core of everything that you do. And whether that's, yes, there are going to be cases where people intentionally do things, but I feel like the majority of it is going to be unintentional and accidental in that co-creation with AI when you don't understand how AI works.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, just to give a quick plug to our poll, which is still open and will be till the end. How much visibility do you currently have into AI use within your teams? Because I guess it comes back to a lot of the points we've been saying. If you can't see it, you can't measure it. If you can't measure it, you don't know what's going on. And the results so far are really quite interesting. So I don't want to spoil anything for everybody, but so far, 40% have no visibility into how AI is being used. Now, that's the kind of thing that if I was listening, I would be a bit worried about. But anyway, let's move on to questions from the audience. And first question, I think we've kind of touched on this a few times, but it'd be interesting to go into it in a bit more depth. But comment on the safety of uploading proprietary information or data for AI review. I think we've all talked about this in different ways, but perhaps let's start with you, Jason, on that score. What do you think of, is it safe? Is it not safe? Does it depend?
I would say if I was my information security director, who is, if he ever sees this recording, this is for you, Kirby. Basically, it's not safe, because you should never upload proprietary data to a generic system. What we have internally, and many people do have this, is we have specific LLMs that are basically you have a non-train element within that model. So it doesn't train itself on anything you upload, anything you ask, anything like that. So there's no training done. Things like NotebookLM and stuff like that are really good for that. The risks of uploading it externally are pretty existential, to be honest, because you could then, again, data in, data out. If you are uploading something that has, very early stages research that has not been peer reviewed, that has not been, there's not been any kind of trials done, all of those kind of things to prove what you're saying, that becoming part of training data can have a pretty negative impact downstream. It could be that someone else uses AI to synthesize some information. It uses that as the training data to sense check what you've said. And therefore, it's now saying that what your actual correct research is doing is wrong. So that, because it's not going to be one person, it's going to be hundreds, thousands, of people doing that. And it's also as well, it's the actual company risk. Now, pharmaceutical isn't a nonprofit. It's, you are in a race to be the first to market with a drug. And if you are putting your proprietary information into a large language model, which then ends up out online and somebody else can get that information, another company can then pick up your research and go, fantastic, we didn't have that bit. Great, finished, done, we win. So there's that other element as well. So it is really, basically it's a no. Don't do it. Unless it is a specific system that has all the guardrails in place to do it. But again, still double check when you're going to do that.
Absolutely. Looking at it from a kind of, especially from academic and hospital perspective, I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, for me, it's a no-no. It's a no-no because it's patient's information. It's very sensitive data. You upload it in a system that, as Jason said, everybody can actually have access. Also, keep in mind that as a scientist, most of the time we want to create patents because this is the way that we actually can promote our work and get more money. So if you actually try, say, oh yeah, I will use it. So that's cool. And put everything in there. Everybody can have access. But at the end of the day, and be very, very serious, is that no, for me, it's a big no, because we are not at the point that we can use AI safely and make sure that GDPR and all the information, and I'm using just GDPR, I'm not going to go to more, strange regulations.
HIPAA and FIN.
Yes. Yeah. So for me, this is the most important thing. So we really need to be very, very careful of how we use it. And right now, for me, it's a big no.
Salah, I'm hoping that you're not going to fundamentally disagree with everybody else and say it's perfectly fine.
Yes and no. So I agree with them when it's sensitive data, but if it's a training data, let's say on a certain chemical that is extremely published, no breach of any regulation, and for the benefits of training, this is not a problem. So it depends on the type of data.
And I think that's a really, really important point. And, it's kind of, I think in terms of governance perspective, you need to be really clear about what is and isn't sensitive data. We are mostly clear on that 99.9% of the times. We know patient data, we know potentially patentable data, but there may be some kind of blurred elements. And if, the one thing that I would add is if you're not sure, don't. But look into it. Don't just accept the risk is too great, but do definitely consider it as you go along. So, Lav, there's a question which is coming for you, and it's kind of a comment on something that you said earlier. So we work in silos, we think in silos, we kind of forget the human factor, even every day. Even everybody says it has to be human centric. And how do we break down those silos a little bit? Can we?
I hope so, but it is difficult unless a big scandal comes out. No one will wake up. I always relate to the pharmaceutical research. So I like the report that came for patient safety about 20, 30 years ago, the Francis report, which highlighted NHS failures. I'd like such a report to come on AI failures, and then nice regulations and detailed regulation will come. And then they will integrate the human work in it. So we have not just human in the loop, we have a human AI collaboration. Just like we use cars and before we used to walk, this is the same.
Absolutely. This is quite an interesting one because I think this speaks to kind of where sometimes we're, especially, I hesitate to say it's older folk like me, are a little bit uncertain about some aspects of the future. But what skills do scientists and operational teams now need so they can use AI well rather than just use it quickly? And Jason, maybe you want to start with this one.
Yeah, I think it's a fundamental understanding of how AI works in terms of, it's not magic. I think that's the thing that always confuses everyone, is that you ask it a question, it gives you this result, which is absolutely fantastic, legible. You can see, you can understand it because it's responding in your, at your level. So it's understanding, how it works and what it's doing behind the scenes, I think is really important. It is looking at training data, it is looking at, the nuance of what you've asked, all of those kind of things, so that you can then get the best out of the tool. But again, a lot of it is going to be down to relevant application of AI and responsible use of AI. I don't think that's really talked about enough. It's like, yes, we can use AI. Yes, we can do this. Yes, we can do this. And people are saying in the future, people will only work if they want to, which I don't believe. But it's about, like I say, understanding where is your place in that conversation with AI. Because if all you're doing is asking a question, getting a result, publishing the result, is there any point in your interaction with that tool? Or could that be an AI agent that does that? So it's like I said before, it's preventing that what we can do with one person with AI is then fixed with 100 people without AI. It's making sure that people are so aware of how to prompt correctly, or if it's not generative AI, it's also being able to understand how you critically think about the results that it's producing so that you actually understand what those results mean as opposed to just taking them as gospel. So I think that's probably the most important thing.
So, I've seen some of your work in action, and so I know exactly that you're a very skilled practitioner in some areas of AI. What would you say are the kind of key skills that are most important in our area?
I would embrace Jason's comments, but add to it some of the soft skills that are essential for prompting AI correctly, or if designing the AI models and putting, for example, punishment reward, putting regularization on AI to get the maximum out of it. These skills, the soft hidden skills there, are critical thinking, resilience to change data, change models, retrain models, problem solving, and as well communication skills are very important because they're essential as well for prompting large language models, changing context of questions to get the maximum out of it.
Vasiliki.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. For me, at the end of the day, we really need education before we start using AI. And I'm so sorry to say that, but not everybody can actually use AI if they cannot understand it. AI is not for all of us. AI needs very specific implementation and understanding of the data to be able to see, just to give you an example, the false positive results. Because AI says so does not mean that is a correct thing at the end of the day. So for me, if I can say, before everybody wants to actually go and use AI, educate yourself, see where your limitations, do collaborations, because this is how science works. We cannot do everything alone, but we really need to actually start to educate ourselves, and AI is not for everybody.
And there's a question which has come in, which is it's an interesting one, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this either. Is it safe to use paid AI systems such as Copilot to upload confidential information? Jason, do you want to take that one? That's kind of seems like your area of expertise.
I mean, there are more safe models and there are less safe models, let's say that. I think, yes, like certain ones, like there's Copilot, there's ChatGPT, there is Gemini, and Anthropic's Claude, that will have kind of a paid organizational tool that does not train itself on the data. It's obviously worth double checking the contract that you have with them to make sure that that is definitely true. We have the same thing ourselves, with our tools, with certain ones where we have ones that train, ones that don't. Luckily, we're not a generative AI company, so we're fine. You don't see the results. But it's always worth checking it. With those paid ones where it is, the data isn't trained, all of those things, or it's an internal database, the theory behind that is that it is safe to do so. And it should be safe to do so, because that's literally what the entire point in that model is. But again, it's always worth that double check. Again, if you aren't 100% sure, double check.
Yeah, I think just a little point I can add to that one. And I'm not going to name the company or the model because it may have changed, but I looked into this a little while ago. I say a little while, it's probably about 2 years for one specific product that we were looking at. And it turned out that while if you were on the enterprise plan, absolutely true that your data was used for was only used within the right context. If you were on a paid plan that was a consumer paid plan, very different terms. So definitely check those terms and conditions if you're not sure. And that's about all we've got time for today, it's been a fantastic conversation. I want to thank Salaf, Vasiliki, Jason for bringing a huge range of insight. It's been great to see the different perspectives as well. And I think it's been a real bit of added value to get such different perspectives across the board on a really, really important topic for us. Just a reminder, it's not too late to fill in that poll, so tick it now if you fancy adding your voice to that. I'll be really interested to see what the final results are on that one. And that's about it for this session. So next session, we have Dr. Clifford Rossi, who's going to take us through what I think is a really, really valuable thing for all scientists, all lab leaders, everyone involved in manufacturing specifically, which is how to persuade the C-suite with data that something like continuous manufacturing is actually going to be a winner for your company. So that should be a really interesting session. Starts in about 15 minutes or so, 3 o'clock our time, UK. And with that, let's close this session. Thanks again to our sponsor, Turnitin, as well. And we shall see you all shortly.